I just sound like black. There are no names in this place. You're just a function, a shadow in the system. You're not a person, you're a tool that follows orders. My job was simple: to watch a closed door that never opened and a camera that showed almost nothing. The job seemed pointless. But here, in the middle of the snowy wastes, the pointless had become the norm. This place doesn't even have a name. It's not on any map. Some symbols are features, but I think of it as a trap. I was sent here for insubordination, a minor mistake that the big boss in the gold medals decided not to forgive. The flight here was terrifying. The old transport plane shook on a skin-tight, turbulent wave. Outside the windows, I saw an endless white landscape. Blizzards, icy plains, sharp mountain peaks that resembled the teeth of some ancient monster. At every step, nature seemed to be trying to say, "You don't belong here." When the plane landed, I saw the bunker for the first time. Its concrete wall seemed unnaturally foreign against the snow-capped mountains. It was like a fragment of another world, roughly pressed into the landscape. I muttered, "Home, sweet home," even though I knew it was a lie. Inside the bunker, the atmosphere was even worse. The metal corridors, lit by the dim light of fluorescent lamps, hummed with the low sound of ventilation. It was so quiet that I could hear my own heartbeat. Everything here was subject to routine. Shift after shift, I looked at the same monitors at the same doors. No change. No event. Time seemed to have simply stopped in this place. But one night changed everything. It began with a barely noticeable movement. I was sitting in front of the monitors when I noticed a shadow on one of the screens. At first, I thought it was just a hindrance to my ability to see. Here in this part of the world, even technology sometimes seems tired. But then the movement repeated itself. A dark figure moved along the edge of the camera, almost imperceptibly. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination. You can't be in a place like this for long and remain completely sane. But a cold fear was already growing within me. A few days later, I went out to inspect the perimeter outside. The wind was so strong it seemed to be trying to rip you out of this world. The snow crunched underfoot, the cold seared my face. It was then that I saw the tracks. They were huge, much larger than human ones. I leaned closer, trying to figure out what kind of creature could have left such prints. They looked like something walking on legs, but it couldn't be an animal I knew. Something about the shape of these tracks gave me a deep sense of unnaturalness. And then I noticed that the tracks didn't just lead along the ground. They led up the wall of the bunker. I raised my head and saw the tracks disappearing at a height. It was impossible. I forced myself to forget about it. I went back to my work, trying to convince myself that it was just a play of light and shadow. But fear had already crept into my mind. That night, the silence exploded with an alarm. A siren sounded so loud that it seemed that the entire bunker shuddered. I rushed to the monitors and began to examine the cameras. At first, I saw nothing, but then something moved in the shadow of one of the corridors. It was a figure, tall, unnaturally long, dark, as if carved from the darkness itself. Its movements were slow but confident, as if it knew that no one could resist it. The creature's eyes were glowing. It wasn't light, it was something else, a pale blue glow that made you feel cold even from a distance. I picked up the radio and tried to report the intrusion, but the response was curt: "Protect the asset at all costs." I armed myself and took up a position by the door I had guarded for 2 years. I was used to fear in this place, but what I saw was something more. It was pure terror. The creature was approaching. Its steps were silent, but each movement made me grip my weapon tighter. The darkness seemed alive. I knew I was standing before something I couldn't understand. And then I heard a sound that made me freeze. It wasn't a voice or a scream. It was like the crunch of ice cracking under the weight. and the sound was coming from the door behind me.